Hello, and welcome to a Twitter space in which we focus on what I think is going to be a deadline that we talk about for, 6 years, 7 years, 8. Like, you think about the other deadlines of years past, and it's like, yeah, the Mark Stone deadline was big. It's one deal. We talk about the first deadline quite a bit and how that went down, and it wasn't very good. And the fallout from that one, Eichel wasn't at the deadline. Wasn't that, a little bit last year. That certainly helped win the cup, so that one's going to go down in the history. But this one, to me, is going to go down as one that we're going to look at for years and years and years and years to come, because it is the beginning of what I think we accidentally came across in a podcast 2 or 3 ago, where we realized, look, this team buys almost all of its top 6 and top 4 players, and then they fill in around the gaps using AHL players, or sometimes they are finding undrafted players or whatever. But for the most part, you look at the majority of their team and their, the top of what the roster is, and most of it is coming from expansion draft, not as much anymore, but purchasing. We'll talk about the picks, we'll talk about all of that as we move forward, but I thought, looking at the future, look at this. They are going to have to find multiple top 6 forwards and multiple top 4 defensemen. Well, here we are, Friday, May 8th, trade deadline 2024, and they just found one of their top 6 forwards. I'm a little weary on that. We'll get to that in a little bit. But also one of their top 4 defensemen. So to get Hanifin, and I'm assuming that Hanifin's going to sign this contract at somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million and change. I think it's going to be a little bit higher than $7 million. I've seen some people say it's just $7 million. We will see how that lands. And again, I'm going to write an article for tomorrow about kind of the power that Vegas has, not the team, but the city and the situation has on getting these guys and having this opportunity to buy a player like Noah Hanifin, who says, I'm out of here, to Calgary. We've never had that happen in Vegas. Not a single player has ever said, get me the fuck out of here. Doesn't really happen. And in turn, the Golden Knights can buy a player that may look like a rental to anyone else, and that player in turn becomes an automatic 8-year extension, 7-year extension, whatever it happens to be. We'll see when we get to that. But the important part to look at is they just bought a top 4 defenseman and arguably a top 6 forward that are going to be here for an extended period of time, and they did it at a deadline where also those 2 players are, in theory, going to help them make the playoffs this season. Hurdle, little bit of question mark on that, but also are going to be under contract for an extended period of time. As we started to look at the roster needing to turn over and turn into something that's going to compete over and over and over and over again, they were going to have to find some of these players. 27-year-old Noah Hanifin, on the contract that we expect him to be on, is going to be one of those players. Tomas Hurdle, on the contract that he's on, is slightly different. And that's why I'm going to start with this. I'm going to open, I want to say that before I start this, I've got people in the chat on Discord, I've got everybody here listening on Twitter Spaces. I want to say that I'm slightly more malleable on this one than I feel like I've been on a lot of different ones. That because I think there's a lot of different ways this can potentially go. I think there's a lot of different balls in the air that I may forget about here or there and say, well, this one, think about this or think about that, or what does it look like with this or whatever. So what I want to say is that as I go through today, as I go through all of this, I want people to challenge me. I want people to say, you're not thinking of this, or you're not thinking of that, or I disagree with this portion of what you're saying. Because I'm going to say a lot about the player, the situation the Sharks came from, where the Golden Knights are going to be in the future, all these different things. I'm going to also basically call these 2 purchases at the deadline offer sheets. And if they were offer sheets in the summer, I don't think most people would be all that happy with it. But because it happens at a deadline, and oddly enough, at a deadline in which the Golden Knights are playing like absolute shit and slowly falling out of the postseason race, and they bought a player that is not going to help them in the next coming weeks, and importantly, against two of the games that they very much need to win to eliminate some of these teams. Because it happens now, we all celebrate it as, wow, they made this good deal. I'm not saying they're terrible deals. Again, I want to say, if you want to raise your hand, it's going to be a minute till I get to people. Probably not going to get to people for the next maybe 20 minutes. But if you want to challenge me, I want to be challenged today because I've had discussions with a number of different people on this, and my eyes have been opened multiple different times where people will say things. I'm like, yeah, actually, that is interesting. Let me look at it that way, or let me look at it this way. All right. So I want you to yell at me. That's all I'm saying. And I enjoy yelling at people. So, Hertl. Tomas Hertl. Tomas Hertl is not the player that Tomas Hertl was in 2019 that we're all used to. Tomas Hertl was a dominant power forward at that time that was also a massive pain in the ass for the Golden Knights. A huge problem for the Golden Knights. In those postseason series, in the regular season, he has been less and less of a problem as the team has become shittier and shittier. The reason I say he's not the same player is because we haven't seen him in the same situation. And so therefore, a lot of the numbers don't look nearly as good. He's a minus 60 in the past 2 years. I'm well aware. Most people on that shitty Sharks team are going to be a minus 60. But a minus 60 is minus 60. It's hard to get around minus 60. And I don't know what the exact number is, but it's big enough that I can just say 60 and I'm not that far off. The next part is the points aren't really there this season. The goals haven't really been there. He doesn't really score 30 goals all that often. He does do things that are different than what the Golden Knights centers do. He is not Jack Eichel. He is not William Karlsson. He is not anything like William or Chandler Stevenson. Maybe you can argue he's a little bit like Nick Waugh. I'm not sure I would even go there. He's a lot bigger, good at holding the puck. Nick Waugh is good at that too, but there's no argument. The Golden Knights are very, very, very good down the center. But again, let me go back to what makes me slightly lukewarm on this deal, and in a way actually makes me more excited about the Hanifin deal and less excited about the Mantha deal. So here's why. Because even with the $17 million salary retention, I don't know why I struggle with that word, even with them holding that 1.3.5 million or whatever that number is, 17% ridiculous. Can we just do round numbers? God damn it. Whatever. So we end up with $6.75 million. If the Golden Knights at this moment right now signed Tomas Hertl for 6 seasons, really 7 because it's this season and the next 6. If they do 7 seasons of Tomas Hertl at $6.75 million, most of us would kind of tilt our head and say, I think that's a lot for a guy that is 30 years old. I know we don't think of it that way because Golden Knights fans look at players that were young when the Golden Knights were in the playoffs years ago, and you think, well, that guy can't possibly be old yet. And he's not old, but he's 30. He's not 26, he's not 22, he's 30. And he still has 6 more years on his contract. Also, there have been injury history. Right now, he is injured. As of this moment, he had knee surgery about 4 weeks ago, which means he's probably not playing in the next 2 weeks. And then once he comes back, we will see. Jack Eichel had a similar surgery. I don't think Jack Eichel's been quite Jack Eichel through 2 games. So, are we not going to get Tomas Hertl through 2 games when that is 7 games away? So now we have, 10 games in the regular season, and the Golden Knights have already been complaining about consistency issues. We have consistency issues, right? And here we are with consistency issues, and we have all these different players in the different situations, and now we're putting in more guys 10 minutes later. And that it's giving me a little bit of 2022 vibes. It scares me a little. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs. I think they're going to be fine, whatever. But that's the part that I look at and I say, okay, so they gave up 2 first-round picks. Is 2 first-round picks for Tomas Hertl, the player, a problem? Probably not. Are you likely to pick a player as good as Tomas Hertl in those 2 first-round picks? Probably not. But he comes with this contract, and even with some of it retained, and with the age he is, and with the injury history that is there, and with the fact that he's actually injured at the very moment, and he has been injured in multiple playoff runs. 2016, he was not there for the Stanley Cup Final. 2019, he was not there for the Western Conference Final after they knocked out the Golden Knights with the bullshit. He was not there in the Western Conference Final. They lost that Western Conference Final to St. Louis. They potentially could win the Cup had that not happened. Also, he has gotten older. The numbers have come down a little bit. I cannot get off the point share numbers from what we have seen this season. I know the San Jose Sharks do not have a lot of points. What actually is it? Now I want to pull it up, because the way point shares works on Hockey Reference is it's what share of the standings points are you responsible for. The Sharks have gotten 37 standings points, and he's responsible for less than 3. That is less than 10% of the team's standing points. He is supposed to be the best player on the roster. There are players on the Golden Knights who have more than that, and there are a lot of good players on the Golden Knights where there are not a lot of good players on the San Jose Sharks. Last year, he was spectacular. Last year, basically almost a point per game, played almost every single game. There's a lot of good things to say with that. So I definitely like the portion of that. I like the player that Tomas Hertl was and probably still is right now, if fully healthy, that we've seen kill the Golden Knights. I do not think that they're getting a broken down player or whatever. But the fact that he was available, the fact that the Golden Knights built another trade around understanding that he was available, and the fact that a team that just signed him using a different GM, another GM, looked at that deal and said, we're not going to be good enough as by the time he declines, which I would have to imagine, we're going to ask Sheng once he comes up here, that's probably only 2, maybe 3 years. So the concern there is they think in 2, maybe 3 years, he's not going to quite be the player that he is right now. And meanwhile, the Golden Knights will have him for 3, possibly 4 more years after that. That's why I look at first round pick, and I say, and I know it's Edstrom, I still view that as a first round pick. I think there was a halfway decent pick, or at least trending towards a decent pick. I think he has a real chance to be something, and we haven't seen enough of him to say this guy can't be that whatever. I basically see this as a first round pick. If it would have been the 2024 first round pick, it wouldn't have really changed anything. I think they basically said we're hanging on to the 2024 first round pick because we want to have that pick at the Sphere once we get there. So that's kind of how I look at that one. All right, let me invite Sheng to speak here, because one of my biggest questions, maybe the number one question I have on all of this, here we go, Sheng, is I don't understand how the Sharks went from, this is a guy 2 years ago that we need to sign for $8 million. This is the cornerstone of our franchise. This is the guy, to now, 2 years later, they've been garbage since. I'm well aware of that. But here we are now, and now we're giving him up for 2 first-round picks, giving 2 third-round picks back, and helping the Golden Knights by holding some of that salary. So Sheng, let's bring Sheng up from San Jose Hockey Now. Fantastic. Sheng is always one of our favorites, and has been one of our favorites since he was covering the Golden Knights back in the day. I still miss Sheng in the press conferences and in the press box and all of it. What's up, Sheng?
Hello. Hey, everybody.
What's going on? All right, so here's what I want to know. First off, do you feel that this was a good move for the Sharks? Like, when you looked at the deal as a whole, I think most of NHL fans were like, whoa, I can't believe that just happened. Vegas fleeced them. Do you think of it that way?
Actually, I do not. Actually, I think the Sharks made a great deal. One scout told me, one NHL scout, not a Sharks scout, not a Golden Knights scout, told me that he thought that Vegas was getting desperate with the deal. And here's why I say that. Thomas Hertl is a terrific player. There's no question about that. I'm not going to say anything bad about his game. But he is signed. He's 30. He is signed for 6 more years. His body, we don't know how it's going to hold up. He's had many knee issues. And so I think for the Sharks, really, this is they corrected a mistake that they made. I heard you ask, why did the Sharks re-sign him 2 years ago?
Yeah.
3 years ago. It was a different regime.
Right.
It was Joe Will was the GM, but it was a Doug Wilson era decision. That regime was going to re-sign Hertl. Mike Greer, if he had been a GM then, as you can tell now, he would have never re-signed Hertl, because that was the point then, 2021-22, where the Sharks should have known that they had to rebuild. After the 2019 playoffs, the Sharks, obviously, it makes sense, right? The next year, 2019-20, makes sense. You just made it to Western Conference Finals. You've lost Joe Pavelski, but still, you have the core of most of your team. You just re-signed Erik Karlsson, so you still think that you're in it because you had just made the Western Conference Finals. Okay, great. That year, they missed the playoffs by a lot, obviously, and the first round pick that they had there ended up being Tim Stützle. They gave it to Ottawa Senators for Karlsson, unprotected. And so anyway, 2020-21, weird COVID year. Okay, let's bring back the band again, right? The sequel bombed at the box office, but let's bring back the band again. That sequel bombed in 2021. So that's 2 years out of playoffs with that kind of the core of the last great Sharks team in 2019. And so that's a point where the Sharks should know, hey, we must rebuild. This is the time to rebuild. And that decision came in the form of Tomas Hertl in the 2021-22 season. Hertl was about to be a UFA. And so what do you do with him? And they made, I think, and I said it back then too, the mistake of re-signing Tomas Hertl. As wonderful a player as he is, as good a person as he is off the ice, great representative. I do understand that the Wilson regime saw him as kind of their next Joe Pavelski, Logan Couture, their kind of lifetime Shark. Representative of the franchise, all the great values of the Sharks franchise, all that kind of stuff. I get all that stuff. But anyway, so this was kind of a makeup for that move. And while I don't think they got the full value here of what they could have got for Hertl in 2022, getting back essentially 2 first-round picks for Hertl, and I don't think it is. That's one of those kind of BS, like essentially first-round picks. And the first rounder you're talking about is some like failed 2020 first-rounder. Edstrom is still considered a very, very good prospect. You guys will know better than me, but I talk to people, they see him as a very solid middle six center, not just a okay middle six center, but a guy that you're going to win with in your middle six. High-character guy, plays 2 ways, and so perfect guy for the Sharks rebuild, I think.
Yeah, I liked David Edstrom. I wasn't sure really much about him when they picked him. Since they've gotten him, I've liked him. We always are a little bit weary the first time these guys come into dev camp, and then they had the rookie face-off, and the Golden Knights had a brutal team at that, so that wasn't great. I think David Edstrom's a halfway decent player. I put it this way. I view him the same, if not better, than the 2024 pick. I think that player and that pick is more valuable than the 2024. So I know a lot of people are saying, well, it's not quite 2 first-round picks. It's a prospect and a pick. I just view it straightforward as it's 2 first-round picks. The big part to me is I look at Hertl's stats, I look at Hertl's age, I look at the injury history, and I have to question, because I don't watch him every day. I will readily admit this. I remember a dominant player that was impossible to get the puck from, impossible to move out of the front, and a major pain in the Golden Knights' ass the entire time. Is he still that 4 years later?
Yeah, the good news there is that last year he had a little bit of a rough season. This season, even though the stats don't reflect it, I think he's been terrific this year. Of course, the team he's playing for this year is actually worse than a really bad Sharks team last year, because last year he had Erik Karlsson to play with, he had Timo Meier to play with. Right, this year he's got literally nobody, and Logan Couture is out for the season too, so got literally nobody to play with. And one article that I wrote that you guys can check out at San Jose Hockey Now, I wrote it around the All-Star break when Hurdle was the Sharks' lone All-Star. And one stat that where you can see kind of Hurdle's dominance again. If you guys remember the Tomas Hurdle from 4 years ago that you guys saw in the 2019 playoffs, that's a guy that could kind of beat people at will with deking it in neutral. He's not the fastest guy, right? But once he gets going and he can string the puck around anybody, right? And so anyway, that stat on ice dekes was somewhere that he suffered last season. Wasn't very strong in that area. This season, he's back. He's top 15 in the league in that regard. And that's one of the things I noticed this season when I watch him, that he can beat that first man, second man on him with a deke. And so that's something that he was doing 4 years ago. And so I think that part is back. He's still big. So he's still tough to move all around the ice. So I don't want to, when we talk about, I like this deal for the Sharks, I think that this deal really does work for both teams. Obviously, Vegas is a win-now team. Yep. And you might call this a desperation move for a team that obviously with Mark Stone's injury and that kind of stuff, right? And they haven't played so well recently. But on the other hand, though, it's a perfectly understandable move because a guy like Tomas Hertl, as he is right now, can help you win right now. And also, too, he's a guy that can help you win in the playoffs. Most importantly, he's not soft skill, right? And obviously for the Sharks, 2 first-round picks, that's great. That's exactly what they need for their rebuild.
If you were to look at the Golden Knights this summer and say, Tomas Hertl, $6.75 million, 6 more seasons, would you believe that that's a good deal for the Golden Knights?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things, right? Like you talk about the other things the Sharks retained, right? Also, they threw in some third-round picks, right? So there's a lot of risk associated with Hertl, right? That we talk about with the injuries and his age and all that kind of stuff, right? He could age like a Joe Pavelski. He can age like a Joe Thornton did for the Sharks, yep. Right? Or he can age. You guys have seen this too. He can age like a Mark-Edward Vlasic. You really have no idea how players are going to age. And so he can age out. He can age really well for you guys or not. So anyway, there's a lot of risk associated with it, and so there's some mitigation there in terms of you get that retention, right? So you turn $8 million plus salary into what is it, like 6.7 or something like that, yeah. Right? So it doesn't feel so bad. I will say with the third round picks, even though that's one of those things that makes it feel like, I guess, some people are saying it's a fleecing for the Golden Knights. If you think about it, though, and I talk with teams about this or people on teams about this a lot. The further out picks go in the future, especially if they're like non-premium picks, like it's not a first-round pick, not a second-round pick, right? The Sharks are going to recoup that 2027 third-rounder in no time, especially with the way that team is going, right? Right. The 2025, that one, the Sharks may miss that one. But so the third round pick is a good pick, but it's not the kind of, it's not a pick that hurts, especially, again, the 2027 that the Sharks are going to get back.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it in a little bit, kind of how I view picks, the way that the Golden Knights have done them. It's a lot different than what I think the way you view picks. It's a lot different than I think how Kelly McCrimmon thought he was going to view picks when he became the general manager of the Golden Knights, or at least the assistant at the time. I think they've kind of turned into basically just a bank account, and how much is in that bank account, when can we use that bank account, and when does it get recouped? That's where we'll have to see moving forward. Before I let you go, is there anything else I didn't ask you or you think you should say about this trade before I tell everyone to go read all your work and put money in your tip jar?
Well, I alluded to it, but remember when the Sharks acquired Erik Karlsson in 2018, right? And everyone thought that the Sharks totally fleeced the Ottawa Senators. And anyway, along with that pick came a 2020 first-round pick that the Sharks did not protect. And they didn't protect that pick. And, of course, what happened, right? The Sharks were terrible. Of course, everyone thought at the time, 2020 first-round pick, the Sharks. You just got Erik Karlsson, the best defenseman in the world. For sure, that pick's going to be in the 20, 25, 30 range, right? Yep. And so you just never know how things go. I expect, of course, that the Golden Knights will be a good team next year, and that pick is not going to be Tim Stützle. It's not going to be a top 5 pick. But I think it is a key thing, though, that there is that possibility of that, and that Mike Greer did acquire in this deal. That's a lottery pick right there, kind of, right? Yep. And so I think that's one thing to remember, that Sharks fans thought exactly the same thing after they acquired Erik Karlsson. Oh, no way is that pick going to be that valuable a pick. And you just never know how a team works, injuries, as you guys know over the years, right? And so you just never know how things end up.
Yep, and I very much remember the fact that the Golden Knights really wanted him. And we all look back now and we say, wow, what would have happened if they had gotten him? They would not have ever gotten Mark Stone.
Yeah.
And probably not have ever gotten Alex Pietrangelo either. So
I never got a Stanley Cup.
And well, we don't know that. Let's not be too mean to Erik Karlsson.
That's
Sheng,
true.
you're the best as always. San Jose Hockey Now is Sheng's website. Go there. Nobody covers the Sharks better. Nobody covers most teams better. I think you cover the team better than anyone, myself included.
I appreciate it. Well, it's good to talk to you guys again. I miss all you guys. Thanks for listening.
You're the best. All right, so let me flip it around a little bit because that was, and I don't blame Sheng. He's going to be. I brought him on to say nice things about the Sharks and nice things about the trade. I'm going to flip it. So because everyone's yapping at me saying you're too mean and you're shitting all over the deal. Look, here's the thing that I want to say about the Golden Knights draft or this deadline is they just bought 3 players that all could potentially help this season and probably should help this season. Granted, you're going to have to win some games at some point, fellas. 7 out of 8 losses, 4 in a row. Hey, hello, we need to win some games. Okay, but let's say they do win some games. Mark Stone comes back or not. I'll touch on that later, what this means for Mark Stone. But either way, they should have 3 players that all of a sudden, when you make the everyone's healthy lineup, or at least the everyone's close to healthy lineup, you're going to have Brett Howden out of the lineup, Paul Cotter out of the lineup, Alec Martinez potentially out of the lineup, or Nick Hague, or whoever you go. The Golden Knights were not very deep. They were not deep at all. Now, inside of this season, the remainder of this season, they are incredibly deep. They're incredibly deep at center. They're incredibly deep on their back end because now Alec Martinez is 7, Ben Hutton is 8, Caden Korzak is potentially 9. This team, all of a sudden, is very, very deep. The challenge is how does it all come together, and does it all come together, and will it all come together fast enough, and will you get the right path to make sure that it does come fast enough that you're not eliminated before things happen. Think back to 2022. That team had so much going for it. Jack Eichel was there. They were going to get Mark Stone back. They did get Mark Stone back. Then they were going to get Riley Smith back. They had this awesome goalie tandem. All these things were looking really good at the time. Thompson was on the come up. Leonard might come back, whatever. All of that looked good. It never quite came together. And then it was just too late. And then they had to move on. And now all the depth that you've acquired is no good because it's gone. And when you look at what is this going to cost down the road, it almost certainly costs either Marchessault or Stevenson. And then beyond that, it almost certainly costs either Carrier or Amadio as well. So now it's a first-round pick this year, next year, a first-round pick, it's 2 years, whatever, you know what I'm saying. First-round pick prospect, Jonathan Marchessault or Chandler Stevenson, and Michael Amadio or William Carrier. It's a lot. There are a lot of things that it potentially can cost them. So here's the other thing, and I said this earlier. This makes me like the Hanifin deal more because getting these players and having these players and looking at the price they now paid on Hanifin, I actually think there's an argument. I've said this earlier today to another journalist. I said if you took all defensemen and all centers, I think Noah Hanifin's higher in the defenseman hierarchy than Tomas Hertl is in the center hierarchy, which you need 4 centers, so you need 6 defensemen, but he plays up in the higher up. I think you've got a bona fide number 1 defenseman. First pair at the very least. Maybe he's not quite at number 1, but he's definitely a first pair defenseman. They paid a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and it potentially is going to come with this deal. If it doesn't come with this extra deal, then it could be a potential problem. I want to correct something I screwed up when I did the Periscope. I said something along the lines and I can hear myself saying it, where I don't care if they re-sign him. I do care if they re-sign him. I don't know what I was saying. I was trying to make a different point and I screwed that up. I'm just correcting that now. I do think if they do not sign Noah Hanifin, this deal looks way different than if they do sign Noah Hanifin moving forward. But that brings me into the next point, which is Kelly McCrimmon saying, quote, "Why do all the deals get done? Quote, we pay. We pay where other teams don't." And recently, that has seemingly worked, right? Here it is. They won the Stanley Cup last year. I hated the Jack Eichel trade. I thought, look at all these things you had to give up. Look at the depth it's going to cost you. But they then went out and got Teddy Bluger and Ivan Barbashev and Phil Kessel. And defensively, they had some extra players down the line there, which was like the Pahal and the Hutton that they didn't have at the time. And then all these things kind of came together, and they did not experience a single injury the entirety of the postseason outside of the goalies, which actually was helpful. They got better when they got there. So in that, it was like, well, they're damaging the depth. And that's exactly what's happening again, but not for now. That's the difference, is the depth now for the next 19 games, as well as hopefully a 25-game playoff run that results in 16 more wins. That we want to become depth that gets them to the Stanley Cup. But if it doesn't, you're now left without 10 of your last 12 your 10 of 12 first-round picks. And so now it's Brisson, the guy they pick in the sphere in the summer here, and that's it. And then there's not one the following year. There's not one the following year, and you're not going to be able to do these same things. Like, people keep saying, how is Vegas doing this over and over and over again? The reason they've been able to do this over and over and over again is twofold. One, players want to come to Vegas and are willing to come to Vegas, so that allowed them to get the Mark Stone deal with only giving up one of them. That allowed them to get the Jack Eichel deal, giving up two, and Alex Tuck. That allowed them to get Alex Pietrangelo, giving up absolutely nothing because he signed as a free agent. So it helps to now say, oh, Noah Hannafin will not re-sign in Calgary. If the Golden Knights are, I don't know, say Columbus, nobody really wants to go to Columbus, well, they can't make this deal. Even if they're in a good position to win, they can't make this deal. Florida did the exact same thing. Miami is very, very good to go to and live in and play in and not have state income tax in. And therefore, Vlad Tarasenko says, well, I'm only going there. So now you get a much better deal on that. Vegas has done something very, very powerful to this organization, which is it offers a guarantee that free agents want to come here and whatever, like disgruntled RFAs or UFAs, pending UFAs, also want to come here. And you can buy them as a rental and then know he's going to stay. That's what happened with Ivan Barbashev. If they wanted Teddy Bluger, he would have stayed. If they wanted Nick Cousins, they did want Matthias Janmark and he stayed. They did it with Ryan Reeves. They've done it with so many different players. Max Pacioretty's another one. That's another one where he said, I want out of here. They go ahead, they find a way to make that work out. So that's a huge part that has happened, and that's something I want to also go through. So, draft capital, because this is something that I constantly see, and I think it's important to kind of understand how I view this and why, when I see 2 first-round picks going out, 2 third-round picks coming back in, that immediately to me is like, uh-oh, that's a lot. Here's why. I do not believe that with all the first-round picks, let me pull up the tweet. The Golden Knights have lost 10 of their last 12 for first-round picks. Seems outrageous. If you list them all, it is over-the-top crazy. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe they traded that many. However, these are the players that the Golden Knights have acquired by utilizing and getting rid of all of those picks. Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, Tomas Hertl, Noah Hannafin, Ivan Barbashev, Tomas Tatar, Max Pacioretty. The chances that those 10 first-round picks turn into those players are basically zero. It's probably less than zero. It's like outrageously zero. There's no way. There's not a number less than zero. But not going to happen. You're not getting what was a second overall pick, a 6th-round pick that turned into a 1st-round pick and should have been a first round. Max Pacioretty was super high. Tomas Tatar was high. Ivan Barbashev, I think, was in the 2nd. I don't know where Hannafin was. Whatever. Don't worry about it. My point is, the difference is everyone looks at that and just says that. A 3rd-round pick is useless because you're not going to pick a 3rd-round pick that's actually going to turn into something. That, on its head, is in theory accurate. However, what I was saying to Shane, I view it like a bank account. Put whatever value you want on them. I don't know how you want to value a pick. It's probably something like a first round pick is $1,000, a second round pick is $400, a third round pick is $100, a fourth, fifth round pick is $20, a sixth round pick is $10, whatever. So you have this bushel of money. You've got all this opportunity. And keep in mind, the Golden Knights got thousands of extra dollars given to them. They did it. I'm not trying to say they didn't do it, but the Golden Knights utilized the expansion draft and destroyed the rest of the league in the expansion draft to get thousands of extra dollars in this till. And then they've utilized it to buy players to win now as opposed to look towards the future. They're going to continue to do that. However, they're not going to be able to keep buying this level of player over and over and over again because they're running out. The picks are starting to go away. 2024, they have 1, 3, 6, 7, 7. 25, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 26, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. The most important picks, if we did the math, they went from somewhere in the neighborhood of $4,500 down to something closer to $2,000. Doesn't mean they have none. Doesn't mean they can't still buy some players and get over the line next year and continue to make their team better. But as the Marchessault, Carlson, McNabb, Pietrangelo, all of these guys that are getting older, Hertl becomes one of those players as well because he's currently 30. As they get older and they fall off, you do not have any of those players behind it. So as they use these picks, you want it to really be valuable for now and in the future. That's why the Hanifin deal all of a sudden looks better and better and better to me. Because it's a first and a second, which is quite a bit of draft capital. You're getting him on another deal, but I expect him to be good for 5 to 6 more years, if not 7. And then that's where now you're going to have more money. The cap's going to continue to go up. You're going to have better opportunities to fill in the rest of the things around that because it's hard to find a player as good as Noah Hanifin when you're not able to draft. Not because the Golden Knights are bad at drafting. We have not seen them draft and try to develop the players up to the level. And I see that as well also. Well, none of the first round picks that the Golden Knights have ever had were any good. That's partially because it moves on. And one of them's the captain of the Montreal Canadiens. So yes, they actually have been pretty good. Next, offer sheets. Here's the thing. Here's why I think some of these deals don't immediately, to me, look as dominant. The Hanifin deal, if you look at any summer, and you look at any 23-year-old who's an RFA, who's a great player, who's hitting a restricted free agency, we all do the same thing. Should they put an offer sheet in on them? Nobody ever does. I'll tell you why in a second. Nobody ever does it. So we all do this and we all look at the chart and like, yeah, I'd probably do that. Here's why they don't do it. Because when you put in an offer sheet, it's a two-way problem. One, you're now paying the player more than what he actually deserved. The good news is here, the Golden Knights probably aren't paying the player more than they deserve. Hanifin will probably get what he deserves because of Vegas, because you have the elite place to live, you have the elite situation with weather and state income tax and where the airport is and all of it, and where you live, and there's golf all the time, and all of this. This helps. That's one. And two, the other one is that the players are willing to stay here. I lost my other one. I said the same thing twice. Nonetheless, I had a second reason. I can't remember it. But when you're looking at those players, those 27, 23-year-old RFAs, you have to overpay them to get them to actually accept that offer sheet. That player accepts the offer sheet. Now, it also has to be so far above that the other team doesn't match it. So the money there is a little bit higher. You're always paying a little bit more. However, the difference is the Golden Knights are doing this with 27-year-olds and 30-year-olds. In the case of Mark Stone, I think he was 26 at the time. RFAs, you're doing it with 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds. It's a huge difference because that player has more time in your own in your system. So you look at this and you say, okay, a first round pick prospect, they get 2/3 back. Would you have done this in the middle of the summer? I don't know. I think I would for Noah Hannafin. I'm not sure I would do it based on the contract. It's really, really hard for me to look at a contract like this and say, new GM comes in and says, I need to get rid of that contract. And then the Golden Knights step up, quote unquote, we will pay the price to get these players. That showed up without question at this deadline. It has shown up in some of deadlines past. So far, it has typically worked out for them, but at times, maybe it didn't. Tomas Tatar, we pay. Didn't really work out. Max Pacioretty, we pay. Not sure that one should have worked, even though he scored a lot of goals for the Golden Knights. These two, the Hannafin one, I'm pretty confident in. The Hurdle one, I'm not as confident because of the age. Next thing, Mark Stone. By the way, I'll open it up right now because I think now's a good time for people to come in. And if you want to challenge me on any of the things I've said before, I'm interested to hear it because, like I said, I'm a lot more malleable on this one than I think I have been in the past. And again, do it on Twitter Spaces, not on Discord, because I don't know how the sound's going to work, and that sounds like a disaster if I try to do more than that. By the way, this Twitter Space and all Twitter Spaces are brought to you by the Jimerson Law Firm. The Jimerson Law Firm is one of Las Vegas's preeminent law firms specializing in high-stakes business, civil, and family litigation when winning matters. Seek out the Jimerson Law Firm. Please, the Golden Knights need to start winning some games. 4 games in a row, 7 out of 8. Time to win. I believe Detroit is getting destroyed in Arizona tonight, so I don't know if that's good or bad. They're going to be on a 4-game losing streak as well. Yeah, they're still getting destroyed in Arizona. So we'll see what that means. 2 teams in a very similar place also chasing their playoff run. Golden Knights are in a little bit better spot because the rest of the division kind of sucks, where the rest of the conference up there is a little bit better. All right, so Mark Stone. When they bought Anthony Mantha, that was a rental, or at least we think it's a rental. By the way, don't really like that trade anymore because if you're only getting 19 games of him, they're really not going to have a spot to be able to continue paying him. If they do, that means even another player's gone. It's basically a 1-for-1. Would I have traded a 2nd-round pick, a 3rd-round pick, and Jonathan Marchessault for Anthony Mantha? No, I probably would not. I'm not judging the first game. We'll give him a little bit more time than that. I'm certainly not judging the 4-minute high stick at the beginning, whatever that happens. That's not the point. I'm skeptical of the player more so than I am skeptical of the player on Hannafin or Hurdle. We'll see. Time will tell on that one. But I think even if he's good, it's going to be awfully difficult for the Golden Knights to retain him. So now it's a pretty significant price for a rental in a situation where should you actually be buying rentals when you're sitting there saying it's impossible to know when Mark Stone might return. The other 2, Noah Hannafin, currently a rental, but there has been discussion of a contract. We expect there to end up being a contract. We will see. By the way, nobody challenging me is scaring me. I don't understand how nobody has any issue with me kind of yapping about some of the issues I see with the Golden Knights trade deadline when everyone says they were fleecing the other team, and I'm not so sure I believe that. But Hannafin, I expect to not be a rental. So Hannafin is not only getting him for the 20 games as well as moving forward, but also I think that it's also going to be there for 7 years. That is an indication maybe we're not getting Mark Stone back. Tomas Hurdle is a really large indication maybe we're not getting Mark Stone back because he is actively injured, which means he does not help you to get into the playoffs, which is still of slight concern, 67% on Hockey Reference. And so that one doesn't really say he's going to come back. Then he's also currently injured, and he's got 6 years left after this one. So that's like, well, we're going to get a bunch of playoff runs with him. We will see. All right, Nikki, what do you got? Come at me. Go ahead and unmute yourself there, Nikki. I don't know where I've never done it. There it is. You're good.
I found it.
All right, yeah.
You were baiting us in the Discord. So
yeah, I know.
So I think my main question is, like, what do you think this does to Marshy with the contract? Because, like, obviously right now we have, like, so many centers.
Yeah, it's bad.
And a lot of money now tied up in centers.
So doing the math, and obviously the math we're doing like arithmetic where this thing is like some sort of calculus beyond whatever. Let's just make it super simple. They should have about $15 million pre-Hannafin. We expect Hannafin to eat up about 7 of that. So you're looking at about 8, somewhere between 7.5 and 8. There's an argument that all could go to Jonathan Marchessault, which means everyone else is gone. The chances they go down that road are pretty low. And by everyone, I mean Martinez. Not sure that many people are losing sleep over that one. I hope he comes back and plays better in this injury, and then we are changing our mind on that. But that's also Stevenson, Amadio, Dorofeev. There's one other one that I can't think of at the moment. Whatever. There's enough of them. It's a lot. I don't think they're just going to say, oh, we've got $15 million. It's going to be Hannafin and Marchessault. They also have to fill the rest of the roster. I think I only had 9 forwards on that. Yeah, so they'd have to get 2 more. I think it was 17. Forwards. Yeah, so it was 17. I think it was 9, 6, and 2. Hannafin would make it 7. Marchessault would make it, that would be 19. So they still would have to get 2 more forwards beyond that. So that actually is another $1.5 million. So that puts Marchessault now down to 6. Like, we're running out of money here. I think it's reasonable looking at where they're at right now. I actually think the favorite is neither Marchessault nor Stevenson after this deal. Like, I think they might want to keep Mantha. They've done this pretty much every time. They like to keep that player, so we'll see. I think it's not good. I think Marchessault is probably out of here. And I think Stevenson, when you look at centers, like, we'll see what they decide to do when Hertl comes back. He's a better face-off guy, which is a huge deal for Bruce Cassidy, not for me. Everyone knows that. But I think he's going to play center, and he's going to continue putting Stevenson on the wing. So when we get to there, it's like, well, do we actually need another center? And I think that's going to be Stevenson's probably gone too. So it's now the trade, like, I'm not going overboard when I tell you, I think it's reasonable that the trade might be first-round pick, David Edstrom, Jonathan Marchessault, Chandler Stevenson, and Anthony Mantha. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah, and then I think my last question would be just, I think what we play the Canucks 2 more times.
Yeah.
I think the most likely scenario is we might play them in the playoffs, and it's like, we're scoreboard watching right now. Obviously, I think they're going to make it, but I'm still scoreboard watching.
I agree. I've had the thing up the whole time. Minnesota needs to lose this game to Colorado because it's like we don't need another team in the mix. And like, come on, Winnipeg, you made a trade. Seattle selling people. Like, let's go, right? Like, yeah, it sucks. We should not be scoreboard watching on March 8th.
Yeah. But I'm wondering, like, I'm going to be paying attention to those 2 Canucks games because, like, Vegas gave up easily the most amount of assets this trade deadline between all the other teams. Yeah. And, like, I remember earlier in the season, we thought the Canucks would be a great matchup, and obviously they played like shit. Excuse my language.
That's
last
fine.
time. But if they don't perform in those 2 games too, I'm very nervous with the playoff.
I'll be honest. I'm a little more nervous about the Seattle games than the Vancouver games, because you think back to the time that they played Seattle this season, which was in the Winter Classic, and that was a shit show. And they were actually fairly healthy in that game. Mark Stone played, Jack Eichel played, William Karlsson played. I think Carrier was out in that game, but pretty much everybody played. Hill might have been out in that game, but the goalie wasn't the problem. I think he did give up one that we didn't like, but they didn't score a goal, so I'm not going to blame the goalie. My thing is, I look at Seattle's schedule, and like, it is littered with Anaheim, Chicago, Columbus, and San Jose down the stretch, and I'm like, oh my God. It's not that crazy that they make up a couple points here or there, and if they were to steal both games against Vegas, and now they're essentially tied in the standings if they were to get that game in hand, say they're a point behind, I think their schedule's easier, and we're going to be fighting this continuity thing. Like, it was a real thing in 2022, and I remember asking the question after the season ended to McCrimmon. I said, do you think the utilizing the LTIR and kind of having to shuffle players in and out and having to use less players and all of this kind of hurt you down the stretch? And he said, no, I think it made us relevant. And I think that's fair, because had they not done any of it, they probably are not even close to the playoffs. So I think that was a fair answer. But I also think that he kind of skirted the question of, like, yeah, that was not helpful. If they had just gone with some of the AHL players for a more consistent period there, they might have gotten 1 or 2 extra games, maybe win one of those shootouts or whatever, and they would have potentially gotten in. I think we're going to be fighting that battle once again. So to me, the Vancouver games, like, I'm always a little bit weary of, like,
I don't know. I'm going to quote you though, because you always say if they lose, if they don't make the playoffs, they're bad. So it doesn't matter no matter what. But if they make the playoffs, the Canucks are going to be potentially the first round matchup. And
so
if they like,
but like the thing is, if they play the Canucks and don't play all that well in those particular 2 games, but say play well in 8 of the last 10 and start defending at a level, but it just happened to not be in those 2 Canucks games, I think we're going to go into the playoffs like, yeah, but usually they play pretty well against the Canucks. You go back to Washington. Vegas smoked Washington both of the 2 games that first season. Didn't really matter. You know, like Vegas smokes San Jose every single year. We get into the playoff series, it's a little bit different. Edmonton was a problem for Vegas in the regular season. Dallas has been a problem for Vegas in the regular season, not in the playoffs. Winnipeg was a bit of a problem for Vegas. Or no, Golden Knights wiped the floor with them, and then the beginning of the series. I don't like to look at those matchups, right? But they do need to play better. Like if it's against Vancouver, if it's against Calgary, if it's against Seattle, whatever. Like, get me 26 points from right here, and you're in the playoffs. But like in a better world, give me 8 of the last 10 points. You do that, and you defend, and you're giving up 1.5 per game. Now we can start talking about them winning the cup again. I'm not sure I can do it right now. And they gave up how many picks at this deadline to get better? That's the scary part to me.
Yeah.
Imagine if Imagine if Calgary takes the spot, and then they have Vegas's 2026 pick. Like, that's a fucking nightmare. Terrifying. All right, good stuff. Let's go to... Yeah, you got it. Let's go to Lang. Lang, go ahead and unmute yourself there. There we go. Did I get you? It's weird. It like gives me the check and then it doesn't. Yeah, go ahead, Lang. Unmute yourself there. Oh, Lang didn't talk. All right. Let me continue going on to some of the other things that I'm looking at. God damn it, the tennis player that I wanted to win lost. Brutal. I'm going to the tennis next week or this weekend, and she lost, and she's the one I wanted to see. Oh well, okay. Damn it, Ons Jabeur, you got to win for me. All right, other things. Bill Foley, $116 million is the current status of where the Golden Knights are at against the salary expenditures, not the cap. $116 million. We can talk about how aggressive the front office is, how they constantly are in win now method, but without him paying that absorbent number every single year and constantly being willing to pay that, none of this happens. So I think we need to shout out Bill Foley as often as I can. I don't think I do it enough. I have a pet name for him on the site, so maybe that's plenty. But in this particular case, when you see that number and understand that they're not exactly a sure thing to be playing home playoff games, like it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that they have 2 home playoff games because they have a first round series against Vancouver and Vancouver plays real well. Like, it's not that crazy. Has it set them up for the future? Absolutely it has. So this deadline will not automatically be a disaster because they don't make the playoffs. It's going to be a lot more than that. But in the short term, yes, it will. Mike, you're always fun coming at me. Let's go.
Hey, Ken.
What's up, buddy?
I'm actually really thrilled about the Hurdle ad. And I just really feel like, just like Hannafin, you can say, well, you're worried about the first round picks that are, they're giving up. Well, they came into, when they won the cup, they had their 2023 first round pick. And as Kelly said, they had almost all of their picks for the next round.
But hang on though, because I take issue with that. a little bit. I know he said that. I understand that. He said like we're the first team to have our first pick or second team in the last decade or whatever. But they didn't have the pick before or the pick before or the pick before or the pick before. Like Brendan Brisson's the only one that was around. They had one of those. And they had 3 first-round picks in 2017. They're all gone. The 18 pick's gone. The 19 pick's gone. The 20 pick was gone. The 21 pick was there. The 22 pick is now gone.
Well, yeah, that's what they've essentially done is they've said they've gotten first-round picks, but they're just first-round picks who have already playing in the NHL.
They're money.
I mean,
they're money.
Look at Hannafin. Hannafin was the number 5 pick.
Yeah. They're pushing
they're
pushing it forward. I agree. Like you're taking that and saying, all right, we'll trade you the 2024 first round pick for the first round pick from 2015 or 14 or for whatever it is. I understand that. The difference is if the Golden Knights would have selected 3 excellent players in 2017, they would not be making the amount of money that Noah Hannafin is now, and they would still be in RFA control and not be even making it anytime soon. Like, they'd have a lot deeper team and a lot more money to go buy some of these other things. I understand they would not be in the position they are in. They would probably not have the Stanley Cup had they done that. So I'm not completely shitting on that strategy. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that eventually they are going to run out. And the depth of the team, which is why we're in the position we're in at the moment with 73 points in 63 games, is because the depth of the team was not very good, has not been good enough to sustain the massive injuries that they have had. This has happened time and time and time again. And then fortunately, there was a 22-game stretch where absolutely no one got injured. Had they had the injuries that Florida had in that series, that Winnipeg had in that series, they probably lose both of those series. So that's where I'm a little bit weary of saying, yeah, this is working absolutely perfectly, when reasonably 2 months from now, not even 2 months from now, a month and a half from now, we could be saying missed playoffs, won Stanley Cup, missed playoffs, and have 0 of their draft picks that are the important ones, well, 1 moving forward. That's the concern.
Yeah, and when you're in the win now mode, I mean, just look what Tampa Bay did. Yeah, they won 2 cups, but I mean, even Colorado, if you look at any team who won the cup, or even teams that went deep, their cupboard was completely decimated for the following 2 or 3 years.
I'm not sure I agree with that though. Tampa won again.
I've looked at it.
Tampa won again and then won again, and then went the second time. Colorado had a tough year last year, but they also are now.
They didn't have any picks left. I mean,
but they had younger players. They had younger players that were making a difference. I understand. The Golden Knights have no young players.
Well, they have that because they were crap for a period of time and got high picks, and then those high picks develop into good players. That was the Vegas strategy, and when they started, but they started off with such a bang that they just, as you know, they just had to change their strategy, and they figured, well, we got this close now.
Yeah,
we might as well just keep.
And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Like I've said it before. I have to eat my shoe on the Eichel thing. I thought that was going to be a step too far. And again, I'm looking at all of these, adding them all up, and I'm wondering, are we a step too far again? I'm always concerned about depth. I'm constantly concerned about depth. And the reason I'm so concerned about it is because they always are a massively injured team. And then all right, you're a little bit more, I don't know if it's optimistic or whatever. You often have a different viewpoint than I have. Do you view the 22-game playoff run as an outlier in regards to health?
When they won the cup?
Yeah. Do you ever think they'll have another run like that?
Well, I mean, but
only health, not how they play.
Let's put it this way. No team could probably sustain or survive the number of injuries that maybe Florida suffered. But a couple of key injuries, to key players, they could have probably survived that. Because everybody's going through that.
But Vegas didn't. That's my point. Vegas didn't.
Right, but that's not the reason they won. They won because...
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think it's a huge reason they won.
Well, they won because they played the style of hockey that they played. Their forwards came back and back checked and assisted a really solid defense. Their defense is not any less solid. I mean, other than Martinez has basically never been the same after the skate blade cut. And this is probably his last year. I would think if maybe he even comes back.
That's cemented now. Hannafin comes in, he's gone. That's it.
Yeah, but he could come back on a 35-year.
I don't even think that's like. Just look at the roster. Like he would have to be the 8th defenseman because Korzak's going to get a spot. I don't even think they would sign him to a minimum contract.
Right. And so, but if they wanted to or they had the ability, they could bring him back on a over 35 contract that has a lot of performance bonuses and that would impact them the following season if they did that. But the bottom line is, like you said, they keep Hannafin and they re-sign him. He's 27. He's good for 7 years?
Yes, that one.
Okay.
Like that one's a lot closer because that one he's not asking for $11 million. Like if he wanted $11 million, we get a problem. And like that's in a way, that's how I view the Hurdle contract is like he's old. He's older. Old is a mean term. He's younger than me by 5 years, so I should shut the fuck up. Nonetheless, he's old in terms of hockey, right? So that contract, yes, they ate up some of it. That is helpful. But it's still $7 million. And by the time it gets down the path, that could be concerning. Hannafin, he's going to be $7 million and he's going to be 31 4 years from now. And you're like, hell yeah, I'll still pay Noah Hannafin that. Like, that's my concern is that some of these other ones are going to come off and the shifting timeline, like it just doesn't quite match up to me. It's way closer today than it was 3 days ago, though. Like 3 days ago, I looked at 3 years down the road and I'm like, oh my God, how are they going to find good players? Now, there's a few more in there. That's good. That's a huge difference. Like, I look at this and I say, I don't think there's going to be that complete disaster tank that a lot of people are expecting. Like, I really don't see that. Because also they can buy whoever they want in the summers.
Right. And what really kind of hampered them over the last 3-4 years was the flat cap that resulted from COVID. You could see that a lot of their plans, the way they had made aggressive trades, kind of assumed the cap was going to continue going up.
Yep.
And when it went flat, it just wiped their plans out and it really stunted them.
That's where I want to ask you again because I'm still interested in your answer. The 22-game run to the Cup where they had 0 injuries. Braden McNabb got a hit to the ribs but played all the games outside of one and specifically told me he would have played that game had it been not 3-1. Shea Theodore was ill for a game, and Will Carrier missed the first 4 games of the first round. Outside of that, and goalie, but I completely wiped the goalie away because the Golden Knights clearly got better on accident when that happened. They went into the playoffs saying Aiden Hill's our 3rd best goalie, and he ended up being their best goalie. They got very fortunate there. Do you believe, based on what you've seen over the history, and now adding another player who just had a knee surgery and is 30 years old, do you believe it is likely or possible or even like what chance do you give that they're going to go into this playoffs and be able to go from April 18th all the way to the middle of June having 0 injuries?
Oh, I don't think any team is, that might have been an outlier having almost no injuries, but it really depends on who's injured. I mean, if Jack Eichel gets injured, well, there you go.
But I feel like
are probably shot.
I feel like last year there were 9 or 10 dudes. If it was Eichel, Stone, Carlson, Marchessault, Smith, Pietrangelo, Theodore, McNabb. I'm trying to think if there's any more that I would say. Like I wouldn't have said, well, maybe Barbashev the way he was playing, but I wouldn't have said Amadio or Howden. I wouldn't have said Carrier, Kolazar. Maybe Wah, he was pretty good for the majority of the time. Maybe Whitecloud or Haig, because then they would have had to put Hutton or Pahal in. I think it was a lot more. I see what you're saying. It's like, yeah, they could have withstood some, and they could have had 30-man games lost through the playoffs, and it wouldn't have killed them. But if they had the injuries Winnipeg had, or if Winnipeg just didn't have the injuries that they had, I don't know they win that series.
Well, you got to remember one thing. None of those series went to 7 games. So, I mean, they basically fairly well handled most of the competition on
completely agree.
What it was, 5 or 6 games.
Completely agree. 6 games twice, and then the second one was stupid. Shouldn't have even gone to 6 games to Dallas. That was dumb. They stopped paying attention for a game or two, and it's like, what are you doing? And then, oh shit, we should pay attention. 6-0. Whatever.
So basically, you have a couple of injuries. Maybe a series goes from 6 games to 7.
Maybe,
but I still think that the way they were playing as a group, I just think they were on. I mean, it's like they say, it's not the best team necessarily that wins. It's
Correct.
the team that plays best.
And they were awesome. And here's something that I was actually talking to a reporter from Vancouver last night. He was sitting next to me in the press box from The Athletic, Harmon. And what I said was, when we went into the playoffs, I still felt like I had some hesitation almost of I don't know, are they going to be able to keep scoring? Are these goalies enough? Are all of this? And what I think I ignored beyond probably way more than I should have, and now I see it now, is hey buddy, they lost 9 games in the last 40 of the season. Why do you not take that into account of they've been pretty damn good for quite a while against really good teams. The difference is this year they haven't. That has not turned on. And maybe I'm too pessimistic on this. I think because of the way it's all going to lay out, and Mark Stone's not coming back where he did. He came back the first game. But I just think when you look at it, I don't think they're going to all of a sudden turn it on and win 17 of these 19 games or 15 even. I just don't.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But I think last year, I think as a unit they played better than their individual parts.
Yeah, for sure.
The quality of the individual players isn't what it is. You add Hannafin. Mantha's a good scorer. He's got an excellent shot. You can tell he's a good playmaker as well. Soft hands, really fast skater. You put Hurdle in there with his big body and he's an immovable object basically in front of the net. And that's what McCrimmon said. He said he has something that we don't have.
I agree.
And that's what makes him different. Like Barbashev last year. They didn't have a guy who could just hit like a Mack truck like Barbashev. And that really helped. That really established, in my view, the Eichel line. They needed a player like that. And I don't think, for example, Stevie might be the guy to do it, but having just 2 fleet players on his wing, Eichel's wing, isn't what they needed. They needed a really physical power forward on that line to kind of forecheck and disrupt what was going on, the defense on the other side. So,
do you think I'm crazy that I still don't like the Barbashev deal? The trade was fine for last year. It didn't really bother me. I wasn't that high on Zach Dean anyway. But I still don't like the 5 years at $5 million apiece. He's got 35 points in 63 games. He actually has more point shares than Hurdle. But I just feel I don't know. I'd rather that money was going elsewhere. I'd rather that money was available to go to Stevenson, to go to Marchessault. We'll see what Mantha is. He can potentially be better. To go to Hannafin. I don't know. Amadio even. Am I nuts on that? Am I not? Why do I not understand Barbashev like everyone else does?
I don't know. I think that the role he plays is really unique. And I think that's his value.
I think I just hate that role. I think you're probably right.
Yeah. Well, the only other thing is that I think in this coming year, I think they'll probably keep Stevenson just because of the way he plays and his speed. and the way he plays with Stone, I think they'll try to keep Marcia. So I think what you're going to probably see is some of these mid players like Carrier, maybe even Colasar, Howden, possibly Amadio. They'll probably lose their contracts or get traded. And then
you can't trade all of those. All those guys you mentioned are unrestricted free agents, so they can't trade any of them now.
Oh, okay. But I think what they'll do, I think between Dorofeyev and Brisson, next year they'll probably be consistent players on the team, and they're a lot cheaper. So
I don't know.
I think between all of that, they'll work something out. Yeah. They might have to do what they did with Riley, just trade one guy, or let one good player go. But I don't think it'll be too much.
That is an interesting Thanks, Mike. I appreciate all of your stuff. You're always good. That is one thing that I've seen a couple of these people build the lineups out and do this, and usually they have Marchessault in there, which basically it's okay, we're going to give Hanifin 7, and then we're going to give Marchessault 6 and change, and then there's basically going to be absolutely nothing left over except for a couple, minimum deals. And I think a couple people have even, I got to look into what exactly Dorofeyev's situation is, but I think he's going to get a little bit of a raise. But there's an argument that the entire cap can be eaten up by Hanifin, Marchessault, and Dorofeyev. And I just look at the lineup, and with the way that it's going to go, where a lot of these guys end up out there, I think you're asking for quite a bit more out of Pavel, who I have hesitation there. I have him in the lineup if they're fully healthy, but it's not one that I'm going to live with him in the lineup for good. I think that if he's not good for a game or two, boom, I'm putting right back in Cotter, or I'm putting back in Howden, or whatever. I just look at that lineup, and it's I feel like you're asking for so much in the depth of the team that you're not going to be able to get the same style of play that this team's going to need. And the other thing is, they just got bigger. They just got slower. Hanifin's pretty fast, but I do believe they got slower by bringing in Hurdle. I'll get to you in a second here, Maddie. That they're now not going to be as much of the transition team as they were. So now it's now you need some of that depth even more to make sure that we're handing off the puck to the top 6 in a better situation. And I'm a little scared of saying Carlson's line is now Brisson and Cotter, and the fourth line is now Kolazar, Wah, and I don't even know who's left. Pavel, I don't know. I just look at that and I'm I'll just put it this way. Somebody sent me one of these lineups, and that's basically what it was, and everything was in line, and it looked fine. And I looked at the roster, and maybe I'm caught up with looking at the everyone's healthy $116 million roster, which isn't right. I know, shut up. It's 87, 89, something like that. Whatever. I look at that, and I'm wow, that's a deep team. This is exciting. They're deep again. And then I look at the roster with everybody's gone, and I'm oh, shit, they're not deep at all anymore. So that's why I don't think it's going to be Marchessault or Stevenson, because I think they're going to look at it and say, we can collect all the rest of these, still have a pretty deep team, still have Eichel, Carlson, Stone, Hurdle, all up the middle here, and and have a pretty decent run with then also having a little bit of extra money to potentially go get somebody else. Maddie, and then Botanoff will go to you next. What's up, Maddie?
Hey, so I think just one thing that I'm curious about is the cap rising.
Yeah.
I think that potentially has a huge impact on the depth for next year. I think I read
no, it's next year. No, I figured that in. I figured that one in. So the roster of players here, I'll pull it up because I think it'll be good to actually do why we're on here. So the roster of players that is currently under contract for next season, and that's going to be an $87.7 million cap, is Eichel, Stone, Carlson, Hurdle, Barbashev, Wah, Kolazar, Howden, Cotter. Defenseman is Pietrangelo, Theodore, McNabb, Whitecloud, Haig, Hutton, and then we assume Hanifin, and then Hill and Thompson. If you put Hanifin in there for exactly 7, the Golden Knights will have just short of $8 million left and will not have Marchessault, Mantha, Stevenson, Martinez, Carrier, Amadio, and Dorofeyev signed. And they'll also need three more forwards, which means at the very minimum, you have to give 2 of them the minimum contract, which is going to be about $800,000, which means that's going to be another 1.6. So we're down to reasonably, that last forward spot has about 6 million, 6.5, somewhere in there. And that's then. Now, cap does go up beyond that. There is an argument it will be $100 million 3 years from now. Okay, that's better. That lessens some of what Hurdle is going to be owed. That lessens some of the pain maybe on what Pietrangelo will be at that point and Carlson and all that. Okay, that's fair. But next year, no. They have $72.7 million under contract, and that's without Hannafin. So it's reasonably 79.7, and they only can go up to 87.
Gotcha. I didn't know you factored in that already.
Yeah.
I guess the other part is, assuming they didn't trade Brisson, so it seems like they must have some faith in him,
or the opposite.
People didn't want him.
That's the one.
Right.
I think it's probably both. I think the Golden Knights probably have a little bit more faith in him than maybe other teams looking at him, so then the value didn't match up. Like, we're valuing him higher than what you are, so therefore why would we give you him, right? Like, I put a value, whatever. Doesn't make sense where everyone's going to value that first round pick kind of similarly. I think everyone's probably going to value Edstrom kind of similarly at the moment. I look at it and I say, like, has Mason Morelli not been better than him? Has, at times, Sheldon Rempel not been better than him? I just, and I hate to do it because I love Brendan. I love the kid. I love the shot. I love some of the things he can do. I don't know that it's ever going to actually translate into what it needs to be, which is top 6 minutes with top 6 talent. I don't know that he's going to get to that level, which concerns me because you can't put him on a fourth line and actually get the gifts that are beneficial to him. He's not going to turn himself into a fourth line player. We had this issue with Glass. It's the same concept, but even worse because Glass was big and played center. So I'm not sold that I can just pencil him in for next season, just like I wasn't sold you could just pencil Cotter in for this season. I don't think it really happened. Dorofeev was better. Dorofeev put himself in a better spot, but then now he's got a concussion. Those don't always get better. Like, now there's injury history on him, which scares me. Howden just got a concussion. Now maybe there's injury history on him. Like, a lot of this concerns me.
Yeah, for sure. It's puzzling if they don't have that faith in Brisson of, what they're going to do next year to have 12 forwards.
Well, it's like, yeah, I mean, my point is, though, the other option is like, okay, well, can Brisson be number 13/14, in which case then you do keep Carrier and Amadio and then have Pavel in your lineup. Like, I think a lot of this, there are ways to do it without paying one of these very expensive players. I stand by, I don't think there's any scenario in the world in which Jonathan Marchessault should not be on this team next season. It makes zero sense to me. And it just does not compute for me. I don't know. I just can't see it. I just think it's stupid. I just think it's a bad decision. So
it's also strange to me that, if we were planning on dropping Marchessault, why aren't we getting a scoring winger to replace him and play with Eichel?
Yeah. They could down the road. They could in the summer. That's the other thing is, we could see a trade somewhere in the summer. Could Shea Theodore go? And not everyone wants to hear that, but if he goes, now you got $5 million. Now you can miss something, different. There are ways around it that they've done before. You just trade someone else. You got all these centers. They're going to trade William Karlsson? I doubt it, but they could. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, you got it. Let's go to Ghost Malone. What a name. What an NFT penguin that is there too. There's also half naked people in your men in your profile picture, so that's something. What do you got, Ghost Malone?
I'm just wondering, in the history of the Golden Knights, like, although we're heavy now, like, who says that everyone's going to be healthy come the start of the next season?
Like, there's clearly a massive question there. Like, you just look at the list right now, and like I remember sitting there listening to McCrimmon today. He's like, oh, yeah, let me go over the health. And then it's like 7 minutes later, he's done with the health report. And you're like, oh, my God. And then I went up and updated the shout out to Adam Kuttner for sponsoring our injury report. I updated that, and I had to add one. I had to put another one in there. So now it's Carrier, Eichel, Dorofeev, Howden. Dorofiev's supposed to be coming back tomorrow. Howden's pretty close. Carrier's pretty close, but neither of them there. Stone, Martinez, Hurdle. Are they all suddenly going to be healthy? And you're playing 19 games that you have to reasonably win 11 to 12 of them to make sure you get into the playoffs. Like, there's probably going to be an injury or two along there too. And then now we need to play from April 18th all the way to the middle of June without getting injured at all again after we did that last year. It's a massive question mark.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of McCrimmon getting in there and saying, like, hey, we haven't had a full, like, all of our $5 million players healthy all year, every year. So I think there's a little bit of a insurance policy there that, hey, we're going to use LTIR, how we have used it the last couple seasons, and we're going to have some players coming up, that can step in. So I just thought it was interesting, that they're willing to do this knowing our history.
Yeah, and he was talking a lot about the future and a lot about we can't make a change in what we want to do in our plan based on the recent results. And he kept saying, like, because of what's happening on the day-to-day. But they've won one home game in 47 days. That's not even an exaggeration. And, like, yeah, there was a deadline in there, and they've gone on some, a long trip in the middle of that. But, like, one home win in that's a Columbus stat. That's an Arizona stat. That's not defending Stanley Cup champion $116 million salary allotment stat. Like, they're not playing good hockey. They haven't been playing good hockey. They have not been playing anything near Stanley Cup winning hockey for 51 or 52 games now. Like, it needs to start now. And that's where I did hear some of the things that he was saying today, which is fine with me, because I've seen a lot of, and it's actually articles mostly I'm seeing, which is like Vegas mortgages the future for now. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's not necessarily accurate. Yeah, they mortgaged future assets, but they also bought Tomas Hertl for the future and the now. They also bought Noah Hannafin for the future and the now. So that is where I don't necessarily think they did. And he said, we can't let the results that are recent get in the way of what we needed to do. They looked at it the same way that I looked at it down the road. Like, whoa, we need to get 5 new top 6 forwards, 3 new top 4 defensemen. This was the start of the process of doing that. And they were able to get a couple of them along this road. So that is like, well, is it a complete nightmare and disaster scenario if you don't make the playoffs? Like, I don't think any of us are going to say it's not, but it's not like they did, say, what Columbus did a few years back, which is like, okay, well, we're going to lose Panarin to free agency. Nope, we're not going to trade him. We're going to lose Bobrovsky to free agency. Nah, we're not going to trade him. We'll also take the best 3 assets that are out there and sell all our picks. And then they won one series, beat the best Tampa team, one of the best teams in regulation history, other than that Boston team from last year. And then now it's like, well, did that work? Like, they're not doing that. They didn't do that. That's not how this worked. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that. All right, let's go to the intern. What do you got?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. So I went in. Obviously, I went into Cap Friendly to look at the roster for next season. I'm going to go over the signing. I'm going to go over the trades, then the signings. Then you let me know how realistic these can be.
I'm confused. Like you're playing you're the GM and then I'm telling you that that's not realistic? Is that what's happening?
Well, I'll just tell you what I did. And I mean, honestly, these are probably somewhat realistic.
Okay.
You know how I am.
Okay.
Okay, so honestly, this year I think that they think Zach Whitecloud has taken a step back, and potentially that Korzak could take his spot.
So we're trading Whitecloud.
I'm sending Whitecloud out.
Okay.
I
think that's
fourth round pick.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I'm not going to say that's going to happen, but okay. That I can see that being a route. Sure.
I'm sending Brett Howden out.
Okay. Why?
Because they have, I mean, he hasn't been that impressive this year either, and I think they have guys who are cheaper than him that can do exactly what he's been doing.
Okay. Are you up against the cap enough that you need an extra $600,000?
The roster I have has 22 players on it and has just under $50,000 in cap space remaining.
Okay. All right, keep going. I don't think they're going to trade 2 roster players, but okay.
I have Hannafin and Marchessault both signing $7 million AAV contracts. Hannafin with 8 years, Marchessault with 4 years.
Okay. I think it'll be 3, but okay. Doesn't matter.
I have Amadio with a $1.45 million AAV deal.
That's too
it's
low.
Basically like what do you think?
That's
you think
too
so?
low. Yeah. I mean, he scored a bunch of goals in the playoffs. He's got 12 goals or whatever it is this year. He's a Stanley Cup champion. He played with up the lineup. He's got a very good defensive stick. Someone's going to throw $3 million at him.
And then I've signed Dorofeev and Korzak both to 3-year, $1.2 million AAV contracts.
Let me pull up is Korzak I know Korzak's not
they're both RFAs.
Does he have ARB?
I don't know.
His numbers aren't that good anyway. All right, yeah, I'm fine with that. Okay.
Okay, so then I have.
Oh, Quid says Dorofeev has ARB. Korzak does not. I guess in that regard, like if Dorofeev scores like 8 goals in the playoffs, then the ARB could potentially fuck them on that one, but otherwise probably not. I don't think there's enough in the regular season. Okay, keep going.
So I have Brisson in the lineup.
Okay.
I have.
Where's he playing? Where's he playing? I'm assuming you made a lineup. Where's he playing?
Right now I have him with Hertl and Dorofeev, but I could also see him playing with Carlson and Amadio and switching Stone to play with Hertl and Dorofeev.
Okay.
So then I put Korzak in Whitecloud's spot, and then I have Rombier and Hutton as the extras. So I have Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev, Hertl, Brisson, Dorofeev, Carlson, Amadio, Stone, Waugh, Kolazar, and Cotter, and then Hanson, Pietrangelo, McNabb, Theodore, Haig, Korzak.
Yeah,
and then the goalies.
So like that. I mean, I don't know that forward group doesn't seem kind of like shallow to you. Where's Cotter, by the way? Where's Cotter?
I said Cotter, fourth line left wing.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, it just seems. I don't know. It seems shallow to me. It seems like they're gonna. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
If they can get Amadio for like basically like what do I have him slightly under double what he makes now, even if you say it's just a 2-year deal.
Oh yeah,
to
I
get
disagreed
him
with that one too.
Yeah, that's the only one that would be
okay. Just read the lineup again, but put Howden's name where Amadio's is.
So Eichel centering Marchessault and Barbashev, Hertl centering Brisson and Dorofeev, Carlson centering Stone and Howden, and then Waugh centering Cotter and Kolazar.
Yeah, see, that seems shallow to me. I would flip your second and third line. Your first line, I think, is a decent to good first line. Your second line, I think, is a good defensive second line, but I don't know the offense generation is going to be at the level that it potentially needs. And then your third and fourth lines, I don't think are going to do all that much. Hertl, we've already seen. You put him with 2 guys that deserve that would be starters on the Sharks, which I think is what you have there. And you're gonna get a half point a game.
Well, then flip Stone and Brisson.
Okay, then I'm balanced, not as good. Am I crazy? Like are you not seeing that it's like, oh my God, there's weak spots all over this lineup?
Well, this essentially looks like the same thing they have now, except...
Yeah, how's that going, Alex?
Well, I know they've been losing a lot, but I'm just saying...
You noticed that? You're also noticing that?
Yeah, well, I've seen it happen.
Okay. See what I'm saying?
I think this is a team... Well, but if they perform the way we know they can, minus the long-term injuries.
But that's the problem. Like, what is with the roster that's currently there? So it's like, all right, we've got Marchessault, we've got Stevenson, we've got Stone and Eichel and Hurdle and Hanifin and Pietrangelo and Theodore and all of this. Like, all of this, yeah. Like, I can look at that and say, like, yeah, if this comes on, that's a cup-winning team. Like, that's close enough to last year's team, maybe even better than last year. Like, I can see that. I'm there on top of that. I look at the team you just said, and I'm like, well, that team's not better than the team that won the cup. In fact, they're probably like quite a bit worse because they're not even nearly as deep. And I'm like, and you're like, and then that's if they're all healthy all season. That ain't gonna happen either.
Well, I wouldn't say that they're not necessarily as deep. I mean, Brombier has played significant amount of time with the team. He's not doing it right now, but he's a usable piece. And Hutton is still the 7th defenseman.
I'm not going to say anything mean about those two. They're nice. They're awesome guys. I'm not going to say anything mean about Hutton and Ronebeer, but my tone.
Well, I don't have them in the starting lineup for a reason, but they can be put in there if needed.
All right. What else do you take umbrage that I've said in the last hour and 30 minutes?
Well, I agree that this move is not necessarily just for this year. It's also for like 3 years from now. I mean,
I don't want you to agree with me. What good? Like, I'm just tell me what I fucked up.
I came into this space like kind of in the middle.
What kind of intern are you? Cannot even hear at 7 o'clock. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Well,
now your mic sucks. This is awful.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that, like, if they really are serious about keeping Jonathan Marchessault, there is 100% a way to do it and still have 2 extras on the team without going over the 87.7.
Reasonably, based on what they've done in the last 5 days, most of the time in which I was on the golf course, do you believe that what they've done in the last 5 days indicates that they want to keep Jonathan Marchessault?
No, but I also don't think they're done because in the summer, I really do think they're going to make moves in the summer.
Okay, well, we'll see. And we have 19 games left, and we have, in theory, a playoff run. Okay, all right. There are reasons. Oh, okay, all right. I need to stop doing this. So I got a couple of questions that I'm going to take from the subtext peeps, and then we'll go from there. Good interning. No, I'm not. I don't believe that. Average to slightly below average interning. All right. So Paul on subtext. By the way, subtext is great. Subtext was excellent this week, at least I think. Especially today, because I was sitting on my computer and I texted you every single time there was a trade. And that was probably nice for all the people that were getting those texts because you don't have to reload Twitter. So that's good. I did it for you. And then you got texts and now you had all the trades and then they traded for Hurdle. And then I think there were a couple trades after that and I didn't text you about those because we don't care anymore. We were only focused on Hurdle at that point. Okay, so Paul on subtext says, how concerned are we about Hill and Thompson for the playoffs? Hill just doesn't seem right as of late. Yeah, I'm concerned and not concerned. I'm concerned because I think if the Golden Knights defending doesn't improve, and I keep saying this, and because everyone yesterday, well, tell me how. Okay, let me tell you how. Here's how the Golden Knights defense has to improve. We'll start in front of their own goal. They have to be a little bit better. I don't think they've been terrible in front of their own goal, but I think it can improve, and if they can keep the puck out of the middle of the ice and more so where the center is, so the mid-slot area as well, which they've had some problems in there, If they can do that a little bit better, I think that's going to lead to more play on the outside. I think the exits are going to improve. Next, the exits have to improve. There's too many problems with passing the puck back up the middle. Martinez being out maybe takes some of those away because a lot of them have been him. Whitecloud's got to get better at it. Haig's got to get better at it. Petrangelo's had some issues. Hannafin had some issues in his first game. There's a lot of the exits have to improve a little bit. Once that happens, now we move to the biggest problem to me, because those typically are happening because they're down there too often. We're trying to exit too often when all 10 players are in the offensive zone. This isn't 2 forecheckers. You beat the 2 forecheckers and you get it out. Granted, that's what happened with the Morelli goal that he blew, and then Hill didn't stop it, and then the rebound, and then Connor Garland, the shining beacon of hope, scored. No, that happened, but that's not what it's been over the past while here. But the next piece is the most important piece. In the neutral zone, there need to be more human beings. When the Golden Knights do not have the puck, there has to be more humans in the neutral zone. When there's only one, now the 2 defensemen have to back into the zone as opposed to playing directly at the blue line as they did throughout all of the playoffs. The wingers have got to get back on the right side of the puck. That is done by not pressing and not playing as often underneath the goal line. They have to get better at having players in the proper position when the puck turns over in the offensive zone. They're pressing for offense, which is leading to not being great in the neutral zone, which is leading to more time in the defensive zone, which is leading to more chances in front of the goal, and inevitably, when they get it back, too many people in the way, forechecking, good players against. Now there's situations where we have these turnovers because you're trying to exit over and over and over again. Even the best players have failed exits. That's the step. The players that they've gotten, Tomas Hertl is injured and is not going to play for probably the next 6 games at least. Maybe it's a little bit better, but probably 6 games plus. Noah Hannafin will help. Noah Hannafin's going to help that a lot. I don't know how Hertl's going to help that because he's not the fleetest of foot guy. He's going to be good at holding the puck and giving them more offensive zone time. I don't know how great he is defensively as a center because I can't say I've watched as much of that or focused as much of that. I'll do a little studying on that and see if we can find some more of that moving forward. Granted, this team's so shitty, and I might not even be able to tell, but I'll try to figure that out. Mantha, I don't think helps that at all. Hannafin's going to help with the skating it out. Hannafin's a good skater, but I think, again, no matter how good your skaters are, if the neutral zone's wide open and you're not getting back pressure, and it's more so than back pressure. I always use that, but I'm talking back pressure that's even or above the puck. Above means closer to your goal than the puck. If back pressure is that, and we have more bodies, more traffic in the neutral zone, that will mean easier exits and less time in the zone. Until that starts happening, they will continue to have this situation that seems like the woe is me, I can't believe this. Mason Morelli turned it over in the offensive zone and then it immediately ends up in the back of the goal. Well, yeah, that is what happened in that particular moment. But over the course of the game, the neutral zone was wide open all day long. The number of times they carried the puck across the blue line is way too high for a team built to win by defending. That's the problem I have seen. And as much as, yes, I think these players potentially can help the overall team, I'm not sure it actually helps in that particular area. Hannafin absolutely, I think, will help in the exits. I think Hannafin can help at being a little bit more consistent at being gapped up when they don't have that pressure compared to some of the less fleet of foot guys that maybe aren't as good in that area. Is it a huge difference though? No. Is he going to suddenly change it because now they don't need the back pressure? No, not at all. They have to start getting this. And unless that happens, they're going to keep being inconsistent and they will not win the cup, which goes back to the question that was there in the first place. How concerned am I about Hill and Thompson? I'm not, unless they don't defend. If they continue not defending, Hill and Thompson will not be good enough. If they start defending at the level that they can, Hill and Thompson will be good enough. That's the simplest way I can put it. And yes, I agree. Aiden Hill's been worse than he normally would be. I think he will be better. The other one you said, on a scale of 1 not surprised to 10 absolutely floored. How surprised were you by Hurdle? And why is the answer 1,000? It wasn't. I'll get to you in a second here, Brad. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 7. I told everybody I think they're going to go for a name that no one's heard, and I think it's going to be a guy with a lot of term, and I think it's going to be a bit of a surprising one. Was I surprised by exactly the player that it was? Yeah, I guess a little bit. Was I surprised by the figure that it was? No, not at all. Or like the framework of what it was? No, I was not. Chris, any sign of VGK working on neutral zone reload in practice? Not really. It's in the systems. It's not something that you're going to be able to do. Like it's just not that simple to do. And I think even if they practice it, they've been told over and over and over. What happened to the guy that wanted to talk? Somebody wanted to talk, and I put them up, and then I told them I'll be a second, and then that person disappeared. Okay. No, I don't think so. Who is the guy you alluded to earlier in a week that you said you'd say if name if it wouldn't happen? I don't know what we're talking about. ATS in there, so I don't know. Okay, thanks again to the Jimerson Law Firm for sponsoring all Twitter Spaces and Periscopes this season. There will, of course, be more. We'll see. I might do one tomorrow. We'll see how the game goes. It's probably more likely I do one if they lose because I think everyone's going to be mad, but we'll see. And then we'll see moving forward. There'll be podcasts and whatnot, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks again to the Jimerson Law Firm. Sign up for the text service. It's going to be good. There's a lot of guys that are on the mend that you could potentially get text updates from me if you want to do that. So definitely do that. And yeah, that's it. Thanks again to Sheng. Go to San Jose Hockey Now. He's always good. If you want to read anything about the Sharks, go ahead and go there. That's it. Good night, everybody.